your lovely Sunday afternoon, evening, morning, depending on where you are in the world. Really excited to have you here and have your support. I am Nathán Goldberg. I graduated from Harvard College in 2018. I'm one of the founders of Harvard Forward. If you are new to Harvard Forward, we are a campaign focused on getting Harvard to act on issues that matter to the alumni community by running candidates for Harvard's board elections. This year, we are running a slate of 3 candidates to the Harvard Board of Overseers after successfully electing 3 candidates to the Harvard Board of Overseers last year. We are in the middle of the petition process where we need to gather signatures from alumni for candidates to get on the ballot. So if you have not signed support nominations for our candidates, please go to harvardforward.org/sign. But getting into today's event, climate action is a real big central part to Harvard Forward's mission. And we are excited to have 3 wonderful speakers today who have experience in climate action and climate policy at Harvard and beyond. So we're going to be listening to them talk a little bit about what Harvard can be doing to really be a leader in the fight against climate change. A quick logistical point, our chat is closed just due to previous issues with Zoom bombers. But if you have any questions for the panelists, you can use the Q&A feature and we'll either get to your question in writing or we'll reserve space for questions from the audience towards the end of the event. I'm gonna hand it over to the panelists and let them introduce themselves. Please say your name, your Harvard affiliation, and a little bit about yourself and why you're here today. Klara, do you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you, Nathan. So my name is Klara Kuemmerle. I am a freshman at the college, class of 2024. And I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, hoping to study environmental public policy, perhaps with a secondary in econ or government. And I've been involved in climate activism since middle school, starting with a group 350.org, also in Cambridge, and then with Sunrise, with Boston Climate Strike, and now really excitedly with Fossil Fuel Divest Harvard. And I'm very excited to be here on this panel with incredible people who have integrated climate action into their day-to-day work.
Awesome, thanks, Klara. Natalie, our Harvard Forward candidate, do you want to take it now?
Sure, thank you so much, Nathan. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today with Klara and Santiago and all of you. I'm Natalie. I am a Harvard Kennedy School graduate from 2016. I was also a Mason Fellow and a Louis Bacon Environmental Leadership Fellow at the Harvard CPL. I currently direct a think tank dedicated to climate risks and regulation here in Brazil, and I'm also a member of the Green Climate Fund's accreditation panel. I've actually been working on climate policy and negotiations for almost 20 years, and that feels old. But basically, I started working in the Amazon rainforest with indigenous peoples, then NGOs, moved from the local to the national level to work with states and the federal government, and also served as a negotiator on behalf of Brazil, my country, at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Since then, I've been working a lot on these various levels and also various sectors. And yeah, I'm happy to share more about my experience and perspectives with you all today.
Awesome, thank you. Santiago, round us out.
Thank you, Nathan. Well, I'm Santiago Creuheras. I graduated with an ALM in government and an ALM in history in 2000 and 2001 from Harvard Extension School. I also spent 2 years at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences in the Department of History, and I've also taken a few courses at the Kennedy School and HBS. And professionally, I'm serving as the Deputy Minister for the Environment and Sustainable Energy, and I'm also a senior consultant on sustainable infrastructure and energy at the Inter-American Development Bank. And on the weekends, I teach at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. It's a great pleasure to join Natalie and Klara. And thank you, Nathan, for considering me to participate in this panel. It's usually younger people, and it's great to be the youngest among the panel, as I was saying before we started. I also had the opportunity to serve in the federal government of Mexico, and I participated as the Director General for Energy Efficiency and Sustainability. It was a new office that was created when I joined the ministry, and the work we did allowed me to be considered, and I ended up becoming the chairman of the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation in Paris, and I also served as a co-leader with France of the Energy Efficiency and Transition Finance Working Group of the Group of 20. So I've been very active in climate change action and initiatives, and it's going to be a great pleasure to share some of the ideas with all of you this afternoon. Again, thank you so much, Nathan, and the rest of the Harvard Forward group. And I forgot to mention, I'm a Harvard Alumni Association elected director, thanks to the support of many of you, and I was one of the endorsed candidates from Harvard Forward in the last ballot. And again, for those of you that I haven't had the chance to thank you again.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We're excited to have, current college student, HAA elected director, potential board of overseers member. So every single part of Harvard, and we'll talk into how those things can go together to make sure Harvard is moving as a single unit in the path to be a climate leader. But for the first question, I really wanted to ask all of you who are involved in climate, environmental issues, sustainability issues, why you do it, why you do the work you do, why you got into it, and why you think this is important. Natalie, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I actually literally chose to work on with climate change in 2007. I was, I think, 24 years old by then. I was doing field work in the Amazon, working with indigenous peoples to try to craft development programs with governments, etc. And then I heard about the conclusions of the fifth assessment of the IPCC report. And actually, that was a wake-up call to me, because I realized that everything that we were trying to do to build in locally in the Amazon with indigenous peoples would certainly, go downhill, would be vanished due to climate change impacts. So I ended up leaving the Amazon rainforest that year. I moved to Norway to work with international partners on crafting a new global mechanism to support sustainable development in the Amazon and climate change. It ended up becoming the largest to date initiative focusing on climate and forests. It's called the Amazon Fund. And through that, I got really involved with climate action at these different levels. Why I continue working on that? I see 2030 as the goal or the deadline that we have to really, to really be successful or not on the climate fight. And I'm all in. I'm putting all my efforts, my entire career around this, and I'm hoping to see more and more people not only aware but doing things and really dedicating themselves to this cause. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Well, we're very glad to have you in this fight. Santiago, do you want to talk a little bit about why you do the work you do?
Yeah, well, I think that enjoying life, it's really important, and doing what you like, what you are concerned for, it's really great if that's what you do every day. And since I was very young, I really became concerned about the importance of sustainability in my country. I was born in Mexico. I lived in Mexico most of my life. I grew up in the state of Puebla, which is a state close to Mexico City, not far, but one of the states that has some of the poorest municipalities in Mexico. Out of the 217 municipalities that the state of Puebla has over 160 are really poor, are similar to what you would see on National Geographic magazines, and that's only less than half an hour away from where I lived, and that made me realize that being concerned about sustainability, being concerned about environmental sustainability and climate change would be really, really important for me in my life. I wanted to change things. I decided to study economics at some point, and then I went to Harvard to learn more things, as many of you have done in the past, and that path has taken me to different places. Currently, I'm really concerned about the state of Puebla's, which is my home state environment, and one of the greatest challenges that I'm trying to work on is the Atoyac River. Unfortunately, is one of the most polluted rivers in Mexico, and possibly one of the most polluted rivers in the world. So I'm trying to change that. I think that that's really important for the future of the state, the future of the people, and even the present of the people living in the state. In the past, I've been working in several initiatives related to sustainability. As I mentioned, I served in the Ministry of Energy as the first director for energy efficiency and sustainability. Energy efficiency is possibly one of the most abstract energy areas, because you cannot really see much of it, and that's something I realized when I started serving at the Ministry of Energy. But it's also one of the areas that provides some of the greatest impact in reducing gas emissions. So I try to also develop different policies related to the energy efficiency arena that tended to be very, very successful, and some of them were adopted in other countries, and that allowed me to serve also in the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation, and bring all of these initiatives to the G20 that also suggested and recommended to adopt them. And I should mention that one of the greatest things that we have to consider when we look at climate action and climate change is how to finance these things, and that's also an area that I have also been looking into, and I worked with France in developing this initiative as well. And now the G20 has an energy efficiency and transition finance working group trying to figure out how to finance these kind of initiatives for the group of 20 members and non-G20 members as well. And I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, for me, I have to say that the science has always been what motivated me early on. I think in middle school we learned about how climate change has started, how it's taking hold in the world. And for me, it just seemed obvious from then on. But I think also in retrospect, I realized how much being able to connect with my family, both in Germany and Argentina, helped with understanding the climate crisis, and also realizing its urgency. I think when I went to Germany, every time we traveled there, just looking at the government politics, there's an entire Green Party dedicated to climate change and addressing it. And it's not a controversial issue there, and the science is just inherent. And for me, listening to the IPCC report, and just the urgency, as Natalie mentioned, 2030 for me is such a visceral date. It's such a terrifying thing for me. That specifically in divestment at Harvard, when Harvard releases a plan to be carbon neutral by 2050, that it's just jarring and painful. And so it's the combination of knowing that we can do so much better, that entire countries are doing so much, and addressing it as the crisis that it is, that motivates me. And I have to say, I've been very lucky to live in a city that hasn't been affected as gravely by the crisis. But that doesn't mean that I'm isolated from it. Like, I look around the world, to the places that are affected by it, that I see, like the burning countrysides in my grandparents' hometown, in South America. But I also look at LA, I look at Australia, I look at places affluent and not affluent that are now being affected by the crisis. And I think that's what got me into this fight, and into climate activism. But one of the more important things for me is what keeps me here. And I think that the Sunrise Movement has taught me a lot about the intersectionality of the climate crisis and social justice issues. But they've also shown me that what the world can look like, and what a community that fights against climate change can look like, that it's relying on acceptance and on respect and on such communal forces that bring us together, that it's just it's consistently so inspiring to be part of it. And I think that when we're fighting against a movement that terrifies me so much and can be very depressing at some points, it's so essential to have groups like Fossil Fuel Divest Harvard, like Sunrise, like all climate action networks, to realize that there are a lot of people who care about this too, and to inspire hope in you, because if we have no hope, then we have nothing else. And I think that that's what keeps me here every day, prioritizing this above all else in whatever I do.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for the work you do. Klara, you touched on a really important point, which is, Harvard can be doing so much better. So why is it not? And, if you don't mind, if we stay with you in your organizing with Fossil Fuel Divest Harvard, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced organizing at Harvard to get Harvard to take action?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, a lot of people are acknowledging the fact that the climate crisis is just undeniable, and that divesting from fossil fuels would be beneficial. It's not a question of science or economics. Leading scientists and economists have backed our movement as a key tactic in fighting the climate crisis. And it's also not a question of will, because divestment has won overwhelming victories among students, among faculty, among alumni. And I stress the word overwhelming because it's crazy how much the Harvard alumni community, the undergraduate community, the faculty, all are 100% behind divesting from fossil fuels. And so it comes down to a question of governance. And I think that's been our main hurdle so far. Harvard is structured in a way that, like, big money and fossil fuel interests hold so much sway, more than future generations do. So it leads to a status quo of inaction that ultimately hurts Harvard. Because, like I said, the divestment proposal that they have put out is not a divestment proposal. It is a proposal to be carbon neutral by 2050, which 2050 is a long way after the point where climate change becomes irreversible and the worst effects start to take hold. We haven't even seen the worst of it, and just thinking about that, I don't know why it doesn't terrify the administration as much as it should. So it comes down to a conflict of interest, I guess. The economics professor I had last term, who I respected and thought so highly of, was opposed to divestment because fossil fuel companies hold so much power in our administration. They invest so much money in scientific research, and even professors in the environmental science and public policy department don't support divestment because their research is funded by the very same fossil fuel companies that we are trying to divest from. So it's this very tight relationship between the administration and fossil fuel companies that no one else in the Harvard community supports except this 13-member board.
Awesome. Well, that's why we're trying to change that altogether. But same question to Natalie. If you want to go next, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your professional background getting institutions to take action?
I think I would summarize challenges in actually a set of three main ones. I think it's very much related to what Klara just said. First of all, it's not technical, or it's not a technical challenge. It's much more political or adaptive, as we like to say. So people have to learn in the process. And what I normally see is not that institutions, they fear change, but they fear losses. So what are the losses entailed in divesting? Or what are the losses entailed, for instance, in ending deforestation in a country like Brazil? There are many. Some will be winners, other will be losers, and we have to deal with both. And I have many examples of situations that we had that kind of challenge and we were successful overcoming it. So one is the Paris Agreement. So I was in Copenhagen in 2009. I don't know if Santiago was there as well, but it was a complete mess, a complete failure. And I think it's remarkable that 5-6 years actually later, the whole world could literally come together to craft a new deal, a new agreement. And what I think was critical to that was precisely that there was a vision, a bold vision of achieving that, and there was optimism. And I couldn't, emphasize more the role of optimism. It's not about naivety. It's not about, this is gonna, anyway, it's optimism in the sense that you have the science, you have the technical knowledge, you have the policy tools, but you have to face the difficulties. You have to face the losses that the many different parties will have to endure. And I think the Paris Agreement is a successful case of that, because everybody had to come to the table, from Saudi Arabia, that has a history tied to fossil fuels, to Brazil, that had a difficulty fighting deforestation, but at that point in time had been successful in reducing by 80% the deforestation in the Amazon. So anyway, I think that was this is a good example. So setting a vision, being optimistic about it, about achieving that, and knowing that that's not technical, that you have to find the political side. And another issue that I think I learned throughout my career and in the situations that I've been part of is that there are low-hanging fruits. And in the case of climate change global policy, I would say ending deforestation is a low-hanging fruit. You don't need to develop new technology. It's just a matter of enforcing legislation and trying to create new economic alternatives. That's basically the equation to solve that. And we know that, and we've been successful in applying that equation, as I've just mentioned. And I've been thinking a lot about that. What are the low-hanging fruits for Harvard to really commit to a bold vision, an ambitious one, and to get it done by 2030, not 2050? I think that's a conversation that has to take place at the university, that has to take place involving students, faculty, everybody. And I think that's a possibility if we get elected to the board of overseers. I think that's the sort of conversation that we can inspire, that we can infuse in the university's governance. So yeah, I think these are the thoughts that I have when I hear Klara speaking and when I hear your question, Nathán.
Thank you. And then Santiago, same question for you. You've also dealt with some really large institutions, Ministry of Energy in Mexico, G20, Inter-American Development Bank. What are some of the challenges to get institutions to act?
Yeah, well, I'm with Klara and Natalie on what they have experienced, and I would probably add that one of the greatest challenges at the very beginning is awareness. We are probably concerned, and we know that it's something that it's important that we need to take drastic action, and we need to do something about it, where the initiative is, as far as it's related to climate change or climate emergency. But bringing the actors to the table, making sure that they are aware and they understand what's going on. Klara was saying that, you know, in some areas there are a lot of people that are being funded for doing fuel related stuff, whereas when you're trying to do something which is climate change related, probably there's no funding for that within the organization, and you have to really, you know, get the funding and the resources to do it from nowhere, basically. But having the awareness and making sure that the problem is understood, the problem is it's on the table, it's probably one of the greatest challenges. The second one, I guess, it's building the capacity to actually solve that issue and solve that challenge, because sometimes you might have a group of people in your team that might be willing to support you, but you need to bring more people in. You need to bring more experts. You need to bring more people to the table to make sure that they help you prioritize what's more important and increase that awareness again. And what Natalie was also talking about, the importance of that adaptation, and I'm sure that she has in the back of her mind these iterations that you have to develop throughout the whole process to make sure that everybody is on the same table. And once you have prioritized the challenges, I should mention what I said a couple of minutes ago in regards to the financing, because once you have already managed to increase that awareness, once you have already built the capacity, once you have prioritized what you need to do first and second and third, you have to look for the resources, and not just the financial resources. Also, you might need some infrastructure or technology. You might need some regulations to make sure things move forward, and that's also an area that needs drastic action in some other countries. Sometimes we are just thinking of developed countries like the US, the UK, Europe, where many of these things have already been approached, and the regulations and legislation have moved forward in many ways. But in other countries, this has not happened as yet. So when you try to implement certain policies, you realize that the regulations you might need does not exist. And that's also something that you have to consider when implementing the solutions for the challenges that you want to approach. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you. And now to take the conversation about, you know, institutions at large and focusing it back on Harvard, which is what brings us all together. We're going to start addressing the first part of a question by Dorian here in the chat. He says, I'm on the board of the Harvard Club of Louisiana and want to do more events around climate change. How can the HAA do more in this regard? And Santiago, we'll start with you since you're an HAA elected director. What are areas where the HAA can be doing more with alumni, with the school, to push for climate action? And then after you, we'll go to Natalie to talk about what the Board of Overseers can be doing, and then Klara to what the role of students is.
Of course. Thank you for asking that question. I didn't know that it was coming that early in the discussion, but it's great. And as you all know, one of the platforms that actually supported me to get into the board of directors of the HAA is especially increasing the drastic action to address climate change at Harvard, and I'm glad that the clubs are getting more concerned about the importance of these, because alumni have to do something about it. Alumni have to work on this at Harvard and at our clubs as alumni clubs. And I have to mention that one of the initiatives that we created a few months ago, and believe it or not, I mean, Harvard has a great number of Harvard clubs all over the world. It has a great number of shared interest groups. And there was not a shared interest group that was directly focusing on climate change action. So now we have a new SIG, and a SIG that was created a few months ago, which is the Harvard Alumni for Climate and the Environment, which is HACE. And I invite you to join this SIG. It's a SIG that it's being supported by a lot or most of the Harvard clubs in the US and the rest of the world. And what this SIG is doing is trying to embed the importance of addressing climate change within the alumni communities all over the world, and trying also to increase the awareness of climate change at Harvard. And many of, if not most of the Harvard Forward members have also started joining this initiative. So that's a point to get started. And I am sure that there will be more things to do in the near future. We believe the Office of Sustainability at Harvard is doing a lot. It's doing a great job, but it needs to do much more. We believe that Harvard really needs a center for increasing these initiatives and building bridges among the different schools. And the way we believe it needs to be done is with with the support of the alumni community. Alumni have to raise that voice and make sure this happens. As you probably know, the Columbia University has already created a School for Sustainability. We know Harvard is not to that level as yet, and it needs to move forward, and it needs to move forward in a faster way. We know that there are a lot of experts, a lot of faculty working on these challenges from different perspectives, but we need to develop a center. We need to create a center or a school or a body, an entity within Harvard that manages to focus on these and does it the Harvard way. We need to build that in order to also build capacity among the alumni community. We need to have that entity that allows to build the bridges among the alumni, the faculty, the private, public, social, academic organizations, and why not even the international organizations. I believe that some of the international organizations that are not as present, except for recruiting, like the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and other organizations such as the OECD, that would be willing to support and have a nest at Harvard in order to have these climate emergency drastic actions addressed, with all of the experience from all of you that are also interested in these matters, and other experts that might be willing to join. And I think that that part is missing at Harvard. Thank you for asking the question.
Natalie, I think that segues nicely into, what are some of the things that, if elected as an overseer, you could push for to make these things a reality?
First of all, I want to echo what Santiago just mentioned. I think we have to use all tools available to sustain effort on climate leadership at Harvard throughout time and get to net zero as soon as possible, including schools, centers, etc. And in that sense, I see that the Board of Overseers has a governing role over these strategic issues. So there are more or less three things that it does and that can help. The main one is that there are visitation processes and standing committees. So the overseers actually, they are influencing the education and the scholarship. And there are many opportunities for the overseers to ensure not only consistency between, long-term view towards greater climate action and academic programs, but also about creating new things, creating new institutions, suggesting at least that can happen or should happen. Secondly, the board advises the administration on priorities. And in that sense, I think I would love to pose questions like, what's our plan to have Harvard taking urgent climate action by 2030? Or how, the decisions that are being made today, they are affecting the different schools, the different students, and so on and so forth. And finally, we know that the board, it actually endorses or approves the appointments to the Harvard Corporation. So there is some influence over those choices, and I think that those are key, precisely because Harvard has this almost $41 billion endowment. And of course, we would like to see that being compatible with the Paris Agreement, being compatible with 2 degrees Celsius maximum global warming. So these are the things that a board can do. So either direct or indirectly, it influences a lot the governance of the university. And as we were hearing Klara say before, and we were discussing a little bit, we see there's a lot of resistance today to really move Harvard forward on issues like climate change. And I truly believe that we need to infuse the overseers with new ideas, with new perspectives, so that really can take it to another level, to be more up to date with what's going on in the world nowadays and in the future, of course.
Awesome. And then to round this out, Klara, let's talk about what the role of students is in gathering grassroots support for climate action.
Yeah, so one of the, I guess, beautiful, maybe tragic things of the climate movement is that it is so intersectional. And you don't need to be just related to, you don't need to be an environmentalist, you don't need to be just in a club relating to climate action to do something about the climate crisis. And so I think that the role of students is similar to anyone else fighting the climate movement, to integrate it into whatever method that you feel most comfortable expressing yourself in, whether that is a Harvard consulting group or whether that's a dance team or anything. I think Fossil Fuel Divest Harvard has at least recognized the intersectionality of this movement and partnered with the Divest prison movement. And I think similar to the way that they help us, we help them. It is such a large issue that impacts every single aspect of our lives, whether we realize it or not, that just advocating for climate justice in any aspect that we can is the role that students need to play, the role that adults need to play. And so I think that it is something that I see as positive, especially among students. I know a lot of my classmates, whether they're at whatever level they're involved in FFDH, they care a lot about their own futures, but they also see it as something that they ought to be involved in, even if they don't pursue ESVP or any environmental science concentration. It's something that they can pursue in whatever concentration you do, whatever interests you have. And so I think going forward, the role that students have and that alumni have is just pressuring Harvard to say that, to say that we as alumni, as students, we care so much about this university. We want the university to care that much about us. And it is ultimately an institution that relies solely upon its alumni and its students. That's how it survives. And so if we are more outward in that communication, if we stress it more, then they will realize that it is a priority for us, as it should be for them. And so, yeah, I just think talking about it more, having discussions like these more often, making it a part of our day-to-day lives, and any climate activism, wherever you can fit it in, is how I think all of us in the world are going to need to approach this crisis.
Awesome, thank you. And I think that's actually a good segue into the second part of Dorian's question in the Q&A. Dorian says, my African-American alumni friends, I assume, usually say that they feel excluded from the leadership of these efforts and don't see climate change advocates having the same passion for other social justice issues. What should I say to them? I'll start by saying, on the campaign side of things, we're aware that climate change does not happen in a vacuum. It compounds and exacerbates other issues and other injustices. It impacts certain populations more than others, and specifically, in the US, Hispanic, Black, Indigenous communities feel the effects of environmental racism and of climate change disasters themselves more strongly than, more whiter and more affluent communities. The same is true across the world. In the global South, everyone on this panel is Latin American or has Latin American roots. That's one subset of people that feel the effects of climate change. That has been an animating feature of our candidate selection. We've tried to be in the last 2 years. We've tried to find people to lead our movement who are representative of the people who are suffering from the climate crisis, who are also representative of a new generation of Harvard students that are more diverse than ever before. We were proud to have 2 of our candidates that were successful last year are by our metrics and by any records we can find, the youngest overseers ever, but also the youngest Black overseer elector, the youngest Black female overseer, the youngest Black male overseer. So we're really trying to change the face of who gets a say, not just in the Board of Overseers, but also in defining the climate movement. We have also tried to expand our platform from last year to better incorporate issues of racial justice. We are having an event similar to this one next weekend focused on the expanded racial justice side of our Harvard Forward platform for 2021. And so we, invite alumni to come join us at that event. We had a lot of questions from people who supported Harvard Forward in 2020 saying, oh, why did we have to go out and add racial justice to the platform? And I think that tells us that Harvard Forward is actually in a position to educate some of our alumni supporters and help bring these issues together into, a coherent, we're fighting for all these issues together, because you can't solve one without the other. But, having said that, I think handing it over to Natalie, I know you've worked directly with some of the populations that are most impacted by environmental racism, by the climate crisis in the Amazon rainforest. So if you want to talk a little bit about your experience in that regard and how that impacts what you're going to be fighting for from the Board of Overseers.
Thank you, Nathán. First of all, I just want to share that I feel extremely privileged to run along Yvette and Megan in this platform of Harvard Forward, which is not only about climate leadership, as you say, is about racial justice, is about inclusive governance. I think it's really great to be with them and with you. And well, from my experience, actually, as I mentioned, I started my career working along indigenous peoples in the Amazon rainforest, which are actually extremely well organized. They know what they want. They know the potential impacts of climate change over them. And this is a very important agenda, but it's not the only one. There are many others. There are many inequalities, and including now, well, we're living through the COVID-19 outbreak, and it's affecting them more than other people here in Brazil. Actually, while many of us were doing social distancing measures and quarantine last year, or even now, indigenous lands were being invaded by illegal loggers, illegal gold miners. And that's why they not only lost a lot of indigenous lives, but also we saw deforestation went up during the pandemic. So anyway, I think it's all bundled together. It's very complex to tackle all of these issues. But more and more, I think the approach is not only to, recognize that these peoples, and I'm just using the example of the indigenous peoples that I work with, and I'm familiar with their situation, but it's not only about recognizing their vulnerability to climate change, but actually that they are also providing solutions. So to the extent that they are aware of what's going on or what's coming up, they're also organizing and they're also coming up with solutions. And I think that's what we need to listen to. And we have to be we have to honor those kind of solutions that are coming from them. I think the UN has evolved a lot in that regards, and there is a declaration, there is today even a mechanism within the Convention on Climate Change to accommodate and actually to put some more light into what the indigenous peoples are doing, but that's just the beginning. So we need to really focus on people, not only on ice caps, greenhouse gases, and focus on what they need to get better and not worse with what's coming up. I think that's what I can share about my experience, and I'm very curious about how this conversation could be done within Harvard. I think it's an important one. Considering not only the perspectives of people in the US, which are super important, but also from the global South. I think we have other situations right here that, anyhow, there's experience, and I think we could share that with the international community and learn from each other. I think that's the message that I wanna convey.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for the last audience submitted Q&A from Rick Findley. I think both Natalie and Santiago can speak to this, but you gotta be short. You both worked at the local, national and international levels on climate action. So what is the level of government that you have found to be most effective in adopting climate initiatives that have the greatest impact for a community?
Well, I guess that each one of them has its role. They have to work on the part that helps solving the challenge or the problem. The perspectives are different, and they tend to be different because the vision from the international organizations, the vision from the national government, and the vision from the local governments tends to be different depending on the goals they want to reach. You have to find the means to converge and build bridges as well among the organizations, so that what you are doing at the local government or at the state or national level makes sense and even gets the support sometimes from the international organizations. So I think the impact from each one of them tends to be different. The closer you are to the people, such as in the local governments, the more difficult to increase that awareness sometimes, because it's when you have to bring more people to the table, and especially in developing countries, when you are trying to implement something, you are trying to bring something to the table, and there are other people trying to bring many other things to the table, and the resources are not huge. So increasing the awareness again on the table at the local levels tends to be more difficult.
I think in terms of emission reductions, I would say that national governments, when they implement effective policies, good policies, they're very successful and impact tremendously. But in terms of climate justice, so in terms of protecting people or dealing with their losses and potential wins, I think all levels are important, and we should have all in. So I don't differentiate the effect of one or another. I think they are all responsible, and they can do a huge difference on their own.
Yeah, to add on that, I think definitely we need all of them. And I think that in terms of federal government, they can often enact big change policies, but again, that takes time. And I think that at the local government, you can achieve more in a shorter amount of time, because there is that personal connection between representative and constituent that you don't necessarily have in the federal government. But at the same time, you can only do so much in a local level. That being said, I think more than whether one is better than the other, I think the type of accountability that you hold to your representatives to is much more important. Speaking as someone who's both interned and campaigned for federal and local candidates, I know that when you are campaigning for a candidate and they know that their support rides on your interest in their pursuing of climate justice policies, they will follow through on that. I can speak to Michelle Wu, the Boston City Councilor, who invited the Boston climate strike into her office for a lunch one day, that she respects our movement, we respect her, and she's fighting for us. She's fighting for a Green New Deal in Boston in her mayoral campaign. Erika Uyterhoven and Nika Lugardo, but also Ed Markey and AOC. Ed Markey's campaign completely changed when he knew that a lot of his support was riding on students for Markey, pushing for his campaign and pushing in large part because of his sponsorship of the Green New Deal. I don't think that he would be as committed to that if it weren't for the ostensibleness that we showed, that we wanted climate justice and climate advocacy, and he's pulling through on that, and AOC is as well. So it definitely depends on accountability. And I think that progress can happen at any level. It will be different types of progress, but the most important thing is how much you push your elected officials, because that's what they're there for. They're there to serve us. And we just need to capitalize on that.
Awesome, thank you. And just as a quick side note, Michelle Wu, who's current Boston City Councilor and running for Boston Mayor, and Erika Uyterhoven, who is a current Massachusetts State Representative, are both Harvard alumni. So, yeah, and we'll end on that. I mean, I think, Natalie, you are spot on with an all of the above approach, and Harvard is, in a sense, all of the above. It's a local community. It has campus with people who are in it. In Cambridge, has impacts on Boston, on Cambridge, but it's also a international community, a global community. It has an impact on what federal governments decide to do. It has an impact on what international governmental agencies decide to do. And so if we can push Harvard to do more on the climate front, then we will have climate action consequences at every level. So that concludes today's programming. Thank you everyone for joining us. We want to reiterate that it is really, really important that you ask all of your Harvard affiliate friends and enemies to sign the petition. We estimate that we are about 500 signatures short with just under 10 days left. So we are on a good path, but we really need all the support that we can get. Danielle is dropping in the chat all the resources that you need to make sure you sign. Go to harvardforward.org/sign and sign if you haven't. Please tell all of your Harvard alumni friends to sign as well. And we have a volunteer toolkit that explains if you want to spend some more time this week before the petition period closes, helping us reach out to new alumni, then you can help us do that through the volunteer toolkit. But thank you, Klara. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Santiago, for joining us today. Yes.
To interrupt, it's important to let people know that if they signed up last year, they have to sign up to support the Harvard Forward volunteers again this year, because many of the people who signed up last year believe that if they signed up last year for Harvard Forward, they are supporting the candidates for this year, and it's not the case. So it's important to make sure everybody knows that if you signed up last year, you have to sign up again and support the candidates for this year.
Yeah, that is a great point. But we're on a good path, but we need all the help we can get to get past the finish line and get Natalie, Yvette, and Megan on the ballot so we can contest a few seats again this year. Let us know if you have any questions. You can always reach us at team@harvardforward.org. And like I said earlier, we have our third event in our series of highlighting each of our candidates next weekend with Yvette and some guests still to be announced. So, you can RSVP for that at our events website. Thank you everyone for joining us and have a great Sunday.
Thank you.